He was hip-hop royalty, and now he's a prison number. Sean Diddy Combs once ruled the music world. Now he wakes up to steel bars instead of skyline views. The mogul who built empires must answer to guards and rules. How does a man obsessed with control survive in a place designed to strip it away? On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we'll show what prison life is really like for Diddy. For the last 12 months, Sean Combs, aka Diddy, aka inmate 37452-054, has been living in a little slice of hell called the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. It's where the disgraced rapper, businessman, and music producer has spent the duration of his infamous celebrity trial, and it's been accused of harboring mold, rats, and nasty drafts. A jail that has featured figures such as Luigi Mangione and the Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. And in that time, Diddy has probably found a whole new meaning in the title of his debut solo album, No Way Out. While waiting for his sentencing, which he got back in early October 2025, more on that later, his typical day started at 7 a.m. when guards woke him for breakfast. Not an easy adjustment for a man used to sleeping in after freak-off parties. MDC is famous for its long lockdown periods, as well as its problems with understaffing. The shortage of staff has made it nearly impossible to control violent outbursts. In the past, that's led to deadly inmate-on-inmate clashes, including the 2024 incident that killed MDC prisoners Edwin Cordero and Uriel White. The jail houses just over 1,700 inmates, most of them still waiting for trial, or for a verdict from the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York. After breakfast, Diddy is allowed a brief period in the exercise room, which is hardly the high-end personal gym that Diddy would be used to. It has yoga mats and a small basketball hoop. Alternatively, he'd be able to go to the rec room, which features a ping pong table, an air hockey table, board games, and a television set. Obviously, not the 100-inch plasma screens that Diddy would be used to back in his free life on the outside. In Diddy's cell block, inmates sleep in stacked bunks with a small TV and a microwave, all of it subject to daily inspections by correctional officers to make sure nothing shady is going on. Diddy himself has called the quarters cramped and windowless. Inmates are not allowed to wear their own clothes, a torturous experience for a fashion-conscious criminal like Diddy. Instead, they're forced to wear brown prison clothes. They have to eat in common areas of the block, and they listen to music or watch movies that can be brought in from the prison's commissary. Diddy's visiting hours were limited to Tuesdays. He could make phone calls to the outside world, but each one was capped at 15 minutes and monitored closely by federal authorities. However, Diddy tried to break the rules on this, buying phone time from other inmates. He allegedly tried to skirt the system by using three-way calls to reach potential witnesses, a workaround meant to dodge the restrictions on his approved contact list. He also had his employees load extra money onto his commissary account. Prisoners at MDC are only able to spend $180 at the commissary every 2 weeks to prevent people living like kings behind closed doors. It's been a period of serious adjustment for Diddy. He's had a tendency to binge use drugs and alcohol over the course of his adult life, something that his wealth has made much easier. But being in jail has led to his first period of extended sobriety in 25 years. According to his lawyers, during one tense incident, another inmate approached him with a prison shiv and accused Diddy of stealing his chair. Combs managed to talk the inmate down before things turned violent, but the encounter rattled him. For a man who once ruled his empire through fear and intimidation, it was a wake-up call. And if all of this wasn't enough, Combs has also not been enjoying the food in jail. According to his lawyer, Mark Agnafilo, Diddy has had an extremely rough time with the food available at the Metropolitan Detention Center. Being an incredibly wealthy man, Diddy was used to eating at Manhattan's finest restaurants. Now, with each jail meal costing just $3 or $4, he's had to adjust to much humbler food. The menu includes tuna in chili sauce, honey buns, cashews, instant grits, protein bars, and Spam. A lineup that horrified him enough to complain through his lawyer. On the 4th of July, a leaked menu revealed that he was served cereal, fruit, milk, butter, and a breakfast cake for breakfast, and a hamburger, bean burger, or 2 hot dogs, among other items for lunch. Diddy and his lawyers have claimed that some of this food has contained maggots, a complaint made by other prisoners at the facility. He's also claimed to have limited access to clean water, meaning he had to boil the water in order for it to be safe to drink. When Diddy showed up in court back in July, he was almost unrecognizable, noticeably thinner, his trademark swagger replaced with fatigue. His once carefully groomed hair and beard had gone gray, not from the stress of prison life, but because prison rules don't allow him to keep dyeing it black. For a man who's built his image on control and perfection, Every look in the mirror must have hit harder than any sentence. Diddy wasn't the only celeb in his cell block of the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center. He shared his dismal fate with Sam Bankman-Fried, the disgraced crypto mogul behind the FTX collapse that cost investors millions. There's a special high-security ward known as 4 North, a place reserved for inmates too famous, too hated, or too valuable to mix in with the general population. It's a 20-man dorm that also houses gang members marked for death, political informants, and criminals who have managed to anger the mafia. The men on 4 North sleep on narrow twin beds with thin mattresses and no pillows, and they shower in communal stalls divided only by thin curtains. Diddy gets 3 showers a week, alone, in cubicles that inmates say are covered in mold. For a man once surrounded by luxury, he is now using plumbing that refuses to work. In just 1 month, the MDC logged more than 800 maintenance requests, many for broken toilets and crumbling infrastructure. The rapper and music mogul will begin serving his 50-month sentence after spending more than a year in jail awaiting trial. Plenty of rappers brag about being pimps in their lyrics. Sean Combs was the real thing, in all the worst ways. Prosecutors accused him of running a sprawling sex trafficking network built on intimidation, violence, and abuse. If all of the charges, especially the charges of racketeering, had stuck, the 55-year-old could have potentially spent the remainder of his life in prison. Naturally, Combs and his lawyers pleaded not guilty on every count. But how many counts were we looking at? 5 in total, 1 for racketeering, 2 for sex trafficking, and another 2 for transportation for prostitution. And if you've been following this story closely, you've probably heard the phrase racketeering thrown around a lot, but you may not know what it means. It's the kind of charge you're more likely to see aimed at mobsters like Al Capone and John Gotti, though it has also been levied against other music industry deviants like R. Kelly. And that's because racketeering is the crime of multiple people coordinating to perform illegal acts in pursuit of commercial profit, while disguising their operations as legitimate. The case was brought under the RICO Act, the same law that once brought down the Sicilian Mafia in America. As the disturbing details of Diddy's operations came to light, many wondered whether that same charge would finally take down Sean Combs. And sadly for the survivors, it did not. The RICO charge ultimately collapsed. Prosecutors couldn't prove that Combs had coordinated with his staff to organize his infamous freak-off sex parties, so the case fell apart, and he was acquitted on that count. However, while many have argued that Combs should have gotten more substantial charges, the case of transportation for prostitution did manage to stick. The result was Combs being sentenced to almost 4 years, given that the time he'd already spent in jail during his trial has been factored in. He will also have to pay a $500,000 fine, which seems severe until you remember that Diddy has an estimated $400 million fortune. During his time in jail, he's been trying to sell off his palatial LA mansion for an eye-watering $61.5 million, which, if he was successful in selling it, would bring his fortune close to $500 million. The world outside didn't wait for him. In the months after his sentencing, sponsors evaporated overnight, and decades-long relationships within the industry went silent. Former collaborators deleted photos, statements, and credits. Revolt TV distanced itself from its leadership, and even longtime allies publicly condemned the allegations. His brand empire, from Ciroc to Sean John, began to collapse from the inside as lawsuits and public boycotts mounted. For an artist who once defined what it meant to own your name, Diddy was now watching his become toxic in real time. But Diddy hasn't just been sitting on his hands during the over 12 months he's spent in the Metropolitan Detention Center. According to his lawyer, quote, "He's been doing a lot of writing. He writes essays, some of which I think are beautiful and poignant and thoughtful." And that's not the craziest part. Somehow Combs has also ran a 6-week seminar with other inmates at the jail called Free Game with Diddy, which honestly sounds pretty sinister. But it only gets worse once you hear what those sessions were actually about. According to Diddy's lawyer, the seminars tried to teach other inmates all of Diddy's skills in business management, entrepreneurship, and personal development, completely ignoring the fact that Diddy was accused of running a sprawling criminal empire. It's approaching the ridiculousness of Hannibal Lecter teaching a vocational cooking class in prison. What makes the Free Game saga so surreal is how it perfectly mirrors the delusion that landed him here in the first place. Diddy has always sold himself as a brand, ambition incarnate. And now, even in a federal detention center, he was trying to monetize morality. To the public, it read like a performance of redemption rather than the real thing. A man who once marketed excess, now marketing wisdom to a captive audience. The same confidence that built his empire was still on full display, only now it was trapped behind razor wire. The free Game with Diddy masterclass even had professional copy, reading, quote, "The course offers exclusive insights into the journey of Sean Diddy Combs, tracing his rise from humble beginnings to becoming a globally recognized icon and influential business mogul. The program provides a unique perspective on navigating and succeeding in the business world." Again, that undeniably feels extremely sinister. Now that we know about what some of Combs' more under-the-table entrepreneurial ventures consisted of. In case you're curious about some of the details of Diddy's sermonizing, one of the classes was called "Successful People Do What Unsuccessful People Won't Do," and another was simply called "Just Do It." It's not hard to see this stuff as extremely weird, knowing everything that we do know. Diddy was seemingly extremely busy during his time in jail, as his lawyer claimed he spent over 20 hours per day working on his case. He was allowed a computer occasionally to help him in this endeavor, but the computer was never connected to the internet. It's remarkable, if all this is true, that he was able to keep up that legal schedule while also planning and executing a self-help course. The course also featured a bonus class called "Can't Stop, Won't Stop," which it's impossible to not read with certain sinister undertones. It's also a message that inmates of a high-security detention center probably would not benefit from hearing. That being said, at least some of his fellow inmates did get something out of attending the course, if these real reviews are anything to go by. One inmate said, "Because of this class, I have a purpose, something to look forward to every day." Another inmate said, "In a place of segregation, I have seen Mr. Combs bring unity to all races and ethnic groups, no matter the background." That's definitely a glowing review, but when you've spent months going out of your mind with boredom in jail, a little ego therapy probably feels like a welcome break. Even if it's coming from the Jeffrey Epstein of the music industry, bragging about what an incredible businessman and human being he is, it feels extremely unlikely that someone without Diddy's money and privilege would be given the opportunity to run a seminar like this. Combs' fame and riches may earn him certain privileges in prison, but it may also put him in greater danger. People convicted of sex crimes have historically found themselves at the bottom of the carceral totem pole. They are often much more likely to find themselves as victims of prison violence, even from their fellow cons. When you add in fame to the mix, things get even more dangerous, especially if you find yourself in the proximity of lifers, for whom prison credit is the only capital that matters anymore. Could the same situation be a risk for Sean Combs as he prepares for prison life with the details of his crimes made so public? Clearly, his lawyers think so because they've been petitioning to ensure that he doesn't end up anywhere too hardcore. Their prison of choice for this disgraced rapper would be FCI Fort Dix in New Jersey, a low-security federal pen operated by the Bureau of Prisons. It has previously held such high-profile criminals as Martin Farmabro Shkreli and Christopher Koch, the ringleader of the Jamaican drug gang, the Shower Posse. Their logic being that the Fort Dix prison had a drug rehabilitation program that could help Combs with his addiction issues, and being in a low-security prison would allow for maximum family visitation time. As it stands, whether this appeal works or what prison Diddy will end up in is still very much up in the air. The wheels of justice often move extremely slowly, and in Diddy's case they are barely even turning. The judge behind his sentencing, Judge Arun Subramanian, has said that this is all up to the Bureau of Prisons itself. With so many people arguing that Diddy's sentence is nowhere near as severe as his crimes, you may be wondering what future awaits Diddy after his 50 months in jail have been served. Well, he's expected to be released in 2028, unless anything that occurs in jail leads to his sentence being extended or cut short dramatically or otherwise. But Combs won't just be returning to his old life after he's released from prison. Not only is his reputation deservedly in tatters, but he's also been sentenced to 5 years of supervised release following his sentence behind bars. For starters, as a condition of this release, he'll need to be part of an outpatient treatment program for drug abuse and mental health issues, as well as an entirely different program for domestic violence. As is standard for ex-cons, he'll be barred from owning a firearm. He'll need to hand over his financial records to his probation officer to ensure that he hasn't returned to any of his criminal enterprises. If his probation officer has any reasonable suspicion that he has violated the terms of his parole, he'll have to submit to searches of his person, property, and electronic devices. One of the most important of those terms being that he cannot contact and cannot encourage anyone else to contact his prior victims. He will be required to work at least 30 hours a week, and he's only permitted to live at a location approved by the probation department. His probation officer is allowed to drop in on him unannounced at any time, in addition to regular drug tests to make sure he is staying clean. While Diddy's sentence might not match the scale of his crimes, there is some comfort in knowing that freedom won't free him from what he's done. The damage he has caused and the people he hurt will follow him long after the cell door opens. You've seen what life is like for Diddy behind bars, but what is it like when you first get locked up? Watch what happens in the first 24 hours in prison to see how inmates face their first day inside, or click on this video instead.